Spacing. It's a term a lot of people use in the Smash scene.
Just out playing with spacing.
The process of spacing safe aerials.
It can even encompass things like spacing.
If you have good spacing,
the part of spacing.
But what actually is it, and why is it so important? Hi and welcome back to Smash Ultimate Basics, where we teach you that swords in this game are your best friend. At least until you get impaled by one. Today we'll be covering everything you need to know about spacing, including what it is, how to use it, training exercises you can use to become much better at it, and some additional tech you can use to support it. This video is going to cover a lot, so I'll leave timestamps if you want to skip to something specific. No need to watch the whole video if you know some of this stuff. In case you haven't noticed, I really don't do this for the views anyway. Also, this guide will reference and sort of build on topics I covered in my previous combo basics guide, so if you ever get lost on terms or concepts, I suggest you go watch that one first. I apologize in advance for the incredibly shouty voice there, but it is what it is. And finally, if you don't know about frame data and what plus or minus on shield means, I'll link a frame data video in the description for you to watch first, since you need to understand that stuff before learning about spacing. Without further ado, let's get right into it. When you hit your opponent's shield with a move that's too unsafe, like Sephiroth's F-tilt, then you're going to get punished with potentially heavy moves. However, a lot of characters don't have added shield options big enough to outrange the F-tilt, so if you hit it with just the edge of the hitbox, then they won't be able to punish you at all. The same concept applies outside of shielding as well. If you think your opponent is going to try and hit you out of the air, you can drift back and avoid that move before punishing with one of your own. This is spacing, where you position yourself in a way that your opponent can't easily hit or punish you, but you're in a position yourself where you can hit or punish them. There's a few main ways you can space in the air. If you're at burst range, or the range where you have all your unreactable options, you can probably just short hop in and hold forward before doing a safe landed aerial, and it'll already be spaced. If you're outside of burst range, you'll need to run into burst range before doing that same safe aerial. To visualize your character's burst range, most of them have one approximately the size of the Pokeball on PS2, or the circles on Battlefield in FT, unless, of course, your character is completely busted instead of just kinda busted. If you're too close to your opponent, you can either do a landed aerial and drift back a little bit, or do a rising aerial and drift all the way back, also known as a fade back aerial. Though keep in mind that the former is easily punishable and the latter can be punished depending on what move you use. If you want a space to avoid attacks and stay outside of your opponent's range, that's pretty case specific, but generally drifting back and being acutely aware of how far the threat range is will serve you very well. Things are relatively simple and intuitive on the ground as well. At that same Pokeball burst range, a lot of characters can dash in and do a safe tilt on shield. Make sure the tilt has range though, or it won't be spaced when you hit it. If you're outside of burst range, then it's the same deal, just run until you're in it before doing your option. Though you'll have to remember that charging in head first like that isn't exactly the best option you have. If you're trying to whiff punish someone's aerial or tilt, you can either dash or walk back before punishing. Both of them have their uses. I think dashing is safer while walking gives you a little more frames to work with. There are plenty of other ways you can use spacing as well. When pressuring in the corner, for example, you need to space yourself most of the time to get maximum coverage. In this particular situation, I need to space my back air to where it can hit rolls on reaction while still being able to safely pressure the opponent's shield. You can also space your recovery in a way to make it hard to challenge, like for example waiting a bit before doing a beefy up B, or a tech where you hold down on the control stick after your up B to safely challenge opponents trying to 2-frame you. If you didn't space the recovery out, you might have gone past the ledge and gotten punished pretty hard. Some combos or techniques in addition require you to space your hits and get a specific hitbox to start or continue them. For completely niche but one of my favorite examples, when Link does his kick, it sends typically in the direction he's facing. However, if you drift forward in the air just a little bit, it'll send back behind you due to Link's really weird back hitbox. That example in particular is a great one for microspacing as well. Microspacing is the same thing as regular spacing but on a much smaller scale. It's a tiny bit of movement that allows you to have more options. If you overspace Lucina's forwarder, then you won't have many good follow-ups to punish your opponents out of shield options. However, if you move only a little bit when spacing it, you'll have a lot more ways to hit your opponent for it. Situations like this are why it's so important to practice and get consistent with spacing. But speaking of which, how exactly do you go about practicing? As much as we'd all love to space like Spargo automagically, the truth is that he, and by extension we, have to put in a ton of effort and training to meet that level of play. If you want to get better spacing, there's a few exercises that'll help you greatly improve your consistency. All of these training exercises are ripped straight from part 5 of Izaw's Art of Smash series, so after you're done watching this video, I highly recommend checking his stuff out. Before you do anything spacing wise, you first gotta master short hopping and all the variations of it. This includes the short hop itself, which is done by pressing and releasing jump within 3 frames, buffered aerials, which are done by pressing jump and attack or the C stick at the same time, and landed aerials, which you do by short hopping normally before pressing an aerial just before you land. You can also short hop by pressing 2 jump buttons at the same time. Make sure to add a fast fall as you get more comfortable with each of these. For directional aerials specifically, it's much better to use the C stick than pressing A, since when unbuffered they don't influence your momentum. You also need to get consistent at jumping backwards, which is done by jumping and hitting your control stick back right after. Every character has their own jump back animation that'll tell you if you got it right, though if you main any of these characters, I got you covered. Start by getting good at short hopping fully back and forth like this, and after getting consistent at the fast fall, then add a landed aerial on top of that. For landing directional aerials, it's much easier with jump set to a shoulder button, since then you won't have to constantly switch between the face buttons and the C stick. Then, start practicing moving only a minimal amount by tapping the control stick to either side right after your jump squat, and after getting comfortable with it, add your fast falls and landed aerials. Once you get good at those, try this drill, where you stand at the edge of the stage before short hopping fully back and landing with a forward air, and when you get to the other side, short hop fully forwards and land with a back air or other aerials you have. If some of your aerials have a weird timing to get the hitbox out low, make sure you practice getting that timing down as well. To see if you got the hitbox out right, most characters have a particle effect or at least something that indicates when the hitbox is out. If you can mod your switch, Hugia's training mod pack also has a hitbox visualizer you can use. Also make sure to do a round of this practicing neutral airs, which to do you jump forward, let go of the control stick while pressing attack, and move the control stick back in the original direction you were holding. Finally, do the exact same thing while moving as little as possible to practice your microspacing. Don't forget to do a round of this with neutral air as well. With all these exercises, you should practice them individually for at least 5 to 10 minutes actively focusing on it, then 5 to 10 minutes where you don't focus and instead let your mind drift off so you become comfortable with it. Izaw in his training videos says 15 to 30 minutes, but A, I personally and I recognize some others don't have the attention span to do it for that long, and B, I think that most of you, especially our resident Nest main, don't normally feel like going into training mode anyway. So 5 to 10 minutes it is, and 15 to 30 if you're committed enough. Speaking of Izaw's video, the exercises I covered here are the base of what you need to get good spacing, but there's plenty of others I didn't cover that will allow you to get much better movement in general. So in other words, if you want to become a god at movement, you should definitely go watch his video after you've done this one. While all of these will help greatly with your spacing, there's plenty of other tech that'll help to layer and add complexity to your gameplay. Some of these are essential while others are relatively niche, but all of them when mastered will add a lot to your spacing game. Let's start with something simple. Slingshot is a relatively simple input with a very wide range of applications. Gimmer was the one who originally coined it, so a link to his video will be in the description if you want more information. To do it, simply flick the control stick forward before hitting down back or up back. If you do it right and you do the down back variant, it should stop your character in a crouching position but not let them turn around. If you time a jump from there correctly, you'll fly back at your character's maximum airspeed. There are 3 main ways to do the slingshot: the flick shot, the hold shot, and the full shot. The flick shot is done by doing the slingshot, so forward and down back before jumping, and letting the control stick turn to neutral. From there, you can either leave it there and time a fast fall, hold back to drift further, or hold forward to get a specific spacing. To do the hold shot, you pretty much do the same things, except you hold the down back input after you jump, causing your character to move forward. Full shot is the exact same as hold shot, only you roll your stick to fully back after your jump, allowing you maximum distance. Slingshot has a very wide range of use depending on your character. Your flick shot is a much easier way to do instant RAR, so it's a very good tool for extending your combos. For your spacing game, you can either use hold or full shot depending on your character to either space around a whiff punish or pressure shield with a safe aerial. Keep in mind though that use cases will vary wildly, and there might not even be one with your specific character, like mine. Link doesn't really benefit from Slingshot all too much. It all depends on their kit and air physics. If you've ever tried to fade back or punish with a Nair out of shield, you would have realized that it doesn't go nearly as far as when you run in with your buffered aerial. That all changes with full momentum Nair. This tech allows you to both start and retain full momentum throughout the entire aerial. To do it, simply press jump, attack 1 to 2 frames after but still in your jump squat, and flick your control stick forward or back on exactly frame 4 of the animation or the frame after your jump squat. If you are 1 frame too early, it'll be a buffered back or forward air, and 1 frame too late means you won't get full momentum. Even though it's a frame perfect input, once you get the timing down, you'll be able to do it pretty easily, and depending on your character, could be really essential to your gameplay. Anyone who has a Nair out of shield for their best option, for example, is going to really benefit from the increased airspeed of full momentum Nair, as it'll increase how much effective range it has. You'll also be able to drift further back with fade back Nair, for example, allowing yourself to be less punishable on shield. The last thing it could do is provide potential combo routes for you to try, like this one for me Brawler. I will say I haven't practiced this one much since my characters don't really use it, but anyone with a good Nair will most likely benefit from this. Remember when I said earlier that with C-stick aerials, when unbuffered they don't influence your momentum? I said unbuffered specifically because buffered aerials actually do influence your momentum to a point, which makes rising aerials very difficult to space with. You can alleviate this somewhat by tilting the C-stick diagonally when doing your aerial, but that doesn't entirely solve the issue. However, there is a way to entirely eliminate C-stick drift. If you do your buffered aerial but release the C-stick before your jump squat is over, then you won't have any momentum at all. This works because for buffered aerials, the game only registers movement on the first frame you're airborne, meaning that releasing the C-stick while you're in the air results in you not moving at all. Keep in mind that because tilts are prioritized over your jump, you'll have to flick the C-stick 1 to 2 frames after you press it, or you'll tilt cancel and get a Nair instead. Which, I mean, is cool, but it's not what we're going for here. This tech only has up to a 2 frame window to perform, but when mastered it gives you full control over your directional aerials. It gives you better spacing on fade back aerials since you don't have to fight with your own momentum. It lets you specify the exact spacing you want out of a dash or run, which is really useful for characters like Marth and Violet. And overall, it just reminds you of another wonderful fighting game made for the Wii U. Isn't that sweet? Very special thank you to Snasen, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, for his tech showcases showing these 2 methods. If you want to see more information on these techniques, I'll leave a link in the description for you to watch his stuff. Overall, spacing is a basic concept that can quickly turn into a convoluted rabbit hole if you're not careful. Spacing itself is essentially just moving in a way where you can hit your opponent without being easily hit yourself. To space effectively, you've got to be aware of you and your opponent's range and move your character according to said range. You can also use spacing at the ledge, when on the ledge, and for a multitude of character-specific things I can't cover here. We also went over practice routines you can use to get better at spacing, practicing micro and macro spacing, and some specific tech that can help complexify your gameplay. All in all, mastering spacing allows you to play 40 chess against your local Roy Mains hopscotch. That's going to be it for today's video. You remember when I said, school's coming up fast, but even so I don't think the next one will take this long? Yeah, that didn't really turn out too great. I'm really sorry this one took so long. I didn't realize how much work I needed to do for my AP Bio, and on top of that, the fall season for esports started, so I had to practice as well. I did have to cut out one of the sections since this video was just getting too long, but I'll probably make it in short form a little bit later, like next month, I don't know. Because my free time is like -2 right now, I'm going to be posting a poll after this video to ask you guys if you'd rather see short form content that I post a little bit more often, long form content I post every 2-ish months, or to wait until I have more free time, which probably is going to be like January-ish. I do want to keep making content, but I don't know if my current schedule can really support that. Thanks for your patience, and yeah, that's about it. See ya.